is Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow for expansions.com, and this is our news podcast for the very first week in October. And you'll be happy to know that Stewart will be back next week. Right now he is in Germany and he will be heading home before you know it. But he has had great receptivity. He's been in Belgium, he's been in Holland, he's been in Italy, and of course he is all over the world, as you know, doing his research and helping to spread hyperspace oversoul work wherever people are interested in hearing about it. With that said, let's move right into the news. And of course, the biggest thing in the US right now on traditional mainstream news is the presidential debates and of course the coming presidential show, I'll say. It's not really an election. Last week I discussed in an article that was in the Journal of Democracy how that 24% of American millennials find democracy to be bad or very bad, because this means that they will eventually prefer an autocratic rule, which we really have anyway, but they're bringing this more and more out into the public so that it is a choice rather than something that's forced on them. And of course, during last week's debate, Trump suggested that perhaps China should invade North Korea. He said, "You look at North Korea, we're doing nothing there. China should solve that problem for us. China should go into North Korea. China is totally powerful as it relates to North Korea." So there you have it. People are just so disgusted, and they're recognizing that this is a show that pretty soon they really don't care who is up there, because they're recognizing publicly that one is as bad as the other. And of course, I tell you over and over again that Trump and Hillary are cousins. And of course, they are both related to the Queen of England. So again, it does not really matter who is in charge of the United States, because neither one of them are in charge of the United States. They're both puppets. And moving on. Next, a UN-affiliated group based in Geneva called what that group was called. Here we go. A working group of experts on people of African descent. They called for U.S. to pay black people reparations for a history of racial terrorism. Now, it's very interesting to me how that they're working here in the U.S. to divide black against white, because slavery has existed throughout eons of time for as long as people have been here on this earth. People are a commodity. People are a resource. And whenever there was war, from one tribe against another, from one peoples against another, from one ethnicity against another, it didn't matter. They took slaves. Doesn't matter what color, doesn't matter what race, it doesn't matter what sex, doesn't matter if you're old or young. They took slaves. So they are trying to instigate a racial war here in the U.S. Now the UN is putting its 2 cents worth in, which I think is really ridiculous. So my advice to you is do not participate, because if you don't participate in any of this, then they are not going to win. And this was an interesting article. This is about an Air Force colonel who was facing court-martial for rape. He was found dead. Apparently they're calling it a suicide. Colonel Eugene Marcus Coffey, formerly the vice commander of the 51st Space Wing at Schriever Air Force Base, had been charged with rape, assault, adultery, and other crimes. His court-martial was scheduled to be on October 17th, and what would have been a rare instance of the military placing a senior officer on trial for sexual assault. Now, Colonel Coffey was 46. He was found dead at his off-base residence, and of course they're suspecting no foul play at this time. Well, as you know, dead men tell no tales, so who knows how he had been set up. The interesting thing about this, beyond the fact that I don't believe it was a suicide, is that the married colonel was also charged with 6 counts of adultery, which is a crime in the military, for allegedly having consensual sex with 4 other women. What makes this so interesting is that apparently in June, his defense team generated headlines when they sought to toss out the adultery charges, arguing that the military's prohibition on extramarital affairs discriminates against heterosexuals. Under military law, adultery is defined as sexual intercourse between a man and a woman who are not married to each other, but the provision does not apply to same-sex couples. So I think, again, this is more information out there that you need to keep your eye on. And then we have South Carolina in the news again, where a teenager killed his father before opening fire at a South Carolina school. He wounded 2 children and a teacher with a handgun. And like I said, South Carolina, North Carolina, continually in the news. And moving on, last week I also told you about the clowns that were beginning to make themselves known. Now remember, clowns have to do with IS programming, which is a very deep level programming, and there's a lot of triggering going on by all these clowns that are being seen out there. We do offer programming scans if you're interested to know what programs are most active in you and what you can do about those. So I just wanted to mention that before I go along. In Reading, Pennsylvania, police are investigating a situation in which a person wearing a clown mask stabbed a 16-year-old who later died from injuries. And then, of course, this incident comes on the heels of numerous other creepy clown sightings. There were multiple clown sightings, again in North Carolina, South Carolina, before emerging in Phillipsburg, New Jersey last week. And then in Warren County, an individual was allegedly dressed as a clown on Hudson Street. And this was interesting because now they go from calling them a clown to a jester. And a jester, again, is another programming icon. So later, another jester was seen holding a sword-like item and running after a child. Then there was another report that said there was a truck with clowns hanging out the window driving down Mercer Street in New Jersey. And then a group of children near an elementary school in Easton, Pennsylvania told police there were 3 people dressed as clowns chasing them. New Jersey State Police warned parents to be on the lookout since school is back in session and children are more likely to walk to and from home from school when they're alone. And so then they say that the new reports maybe are people trying to imitate the ones in North Carolina and South Carolina. Dozens of sightings have occurred in more than 10 states this past month, with police increasing patrols and parents fearful for their children's safety. So, it's interesting because I don't really know anybody that really likes clowns, although they're usually in circuses, and we don't have circuses like we used to anymore. So now they're having another way to get clowns out on the news and have people see them so it can activate your programming triggers. So again, consider a programming scan if you've not had one done. And some people were asking me if they've had them done, how soon can they have another? And we usually say most likely around 18 months. Otherwise, if you're not doing your deprogramming work, it's going to be basically the same. And even if you are, it takes about 18 months to really feel the full benefits of a programming scan if you're doing your work. So moving on, now I have reported about this story through the last couple of years, but I continue to report on it because I find it very interesting. This is about an Italian surgeon, Dr. Sergio Canavero, who is planning on doing the first human head transplant, and he is still saying next year. And now his team plans to test this procedure on human corpses. They're calling this Frankenstein test because apparently they use electricity to stimulate the nerves in dead bodies after first cutting and then reconnecting the spinal cord as a test of their technique. Now, I have talked to you before about the Russian man who has lots of problems with his body, who has volunteered to be the first transplant. I want to say victim, but I guess you'd call it patient. It says here that in an article for the Surgical Neurology International, Dr. Canavero and his colleague in South Korea and China drew parallels to the infamous story of Frankenstein, where electricity is used to reanimate the fictional monster. Now this I had never heard of, maybe you have. In this article, he points to experiments that were conducted in the 1800s using the corpses of criminals who had been hung as proof that such tests could be successful. I had never heard about that. He says, and his colleagues apparently join in, that a fresh cadaver might act as a proxy for a live subject as long as a window of opportunity is respected, such as a few hours. Personally, I don't think that's a very big window of opportunity. And I don't like it. Please don't do this to me. It also implies that the process of deathly disintegration is not an immediate process. We therefore name this effect the Frankenstein effect. Apparently, Dr. Canavero and his colleagues say that the results of experiments to show they can reconnect the spinal cord happened after it was severed in a dog, and then after 3 weeks, it says the dog was able to walk again and wag its tail. Then he said that it will also work in humans if they fuse the two ends of the spinal cord together. So they could use it to connect a transplanted head to a donor body, which would then allow a paralyzed patient to regain control of a body. In China, it is claimed that scientists there performed a head transplant on a monkey, where they connected up the blood supply between the head and the new body. However, the monkey did not survive and died. And then Dr. Canavero said his team intended to conduct experiments on dead bodies before attempting a head transplant with the person from Russia who has agreed to be the first transplant patient. He said his team will only go ahead if there was at least a 90% chance of them surviving the procedure. Let's see. Anyway, I just think it sounds really terrible. He said that only after extensive cadaveric rehearsals and final proof of principal surgery on brain-dead organ donors will we move on to the live person. His plans to reanimate corpses will doubtlessly require ethical approval and may pose a barrier to the experiment. So we'll see. And then we have in California, there have been a swarm of quakes, more than 35 mini earthquakes less than 4 miles from the San Andreas Fault. So therefore, people are starting to get nervous and questions are being asked if this is the precursor to the big one, which could kill hundreds and cause billions of dollars in damage. So as Stewart and I have told you for many years, if you live there, well, there's a big chance that you're taking. But that's, of course, your path. And then in the Czech Republic, they have found the world's deepest cave, they believe, because it is at least 404 meters deep, and a robot probe still has not yet hit the bottom. And remember, I have been telling you for quite some time now that there is something under the water, and they're not telling you yet what that is. But of course, they do know, but they're letting you think that they don't know. And then moving on into outer space. Life beyond our galaxy could be really odd, really. There is a gas cloud that is around a distant newborn star containing different chemicals to those in our own galaxy, which suggests that life beyond our own galaxy, if it exists, could be far odder than we had previously believed possible. And this is what I've been telling you. You cannot base other life forms on our needs. You don't know what their needs are. So I just think it's interesting to finally telling you that. And this is another story that I had reported on when it first came out, but I just wanted to bring you an update because it's following right along with what I've been telling you. And that is that there is a sex robot cafe which is going to be open in London. It's going to be London's first fellatio cafe, and the staff will be made up entirely of sex robots. Businessman Bradley Charvet plans to open this cafe in Paddington and said the sex bots will be programmable to a person's need and will soon be seen as totally normal. And that's what I've been telling you. The sex with a regular person is going to be abnormal, and sex with a robot is going to be considered normal. So apparently he's going to launch his first cafe in Geneva, Switzerland later this year, and then he's going to open this one in London. And if this is a success, which he's planning on it being, he's going to open up a 24/7 shop in the heart of Manchester. And then he's talking about how this is going to be a normal thing, that they could be programmable to the client, or except they're called a person rather than a client. And it's really, he's saying, not having anything to do with prostitution because it's not a person, it's a robot. He said they will improve the sex service. It's totally normal to see a new way of using robots and other sex toys to have pleasure. He thinks that the cafe will be a hub of social activity where friends meet to chat, drink coffee, and enjoy casual robotic sex acts. So he said people like to chat before they make love. It makes sense the robots will speak and tease men's desire. Now, I don't really consider this making love. I think it's sex. And of course, once they get this up and running, then they will do the same thing with women, but they're going to start with men. That's my commentary there. It doesn't say that part in the article, but that's what I believe will happen. And it says the Paddington Cafe will be home to 8 robots dressed in different costumes, such as a nurse, a police person, a student, and a secretary. So anyway, as I said, the world is very bizarre. You don't have to participate in it, but do be aware of what's going on out there. And so that's my last story, but I do want to remind you that October 22nd is the Transformational Shift Conference in Tucson, Arizona, where Stewart will be on a panel. He's not a speaker, but he's a panel where you can ask him questions. I think it's about 90 minutes. So If you want to have an opportunity to visit with him briefly, very briefly, that is your opportunity. In Poland, the end of October, he will be at their Exposing the Truth conference. In the first part of November, he will be back in Italy and home in time for his November 5th birthday, and then on to Australia the end of November. And of course, that is heading into our big event, January 2017. It's our biggest, most intense class that we have of the year. It is a 7-day, week-long event called our Hyperspace Oversoul Extravaganza. And if you want to be a part of our Oversoul Mastermind group in 2017, you must have this January class first, because the people that are in that group, we need to know they're kind of on a same even playing field. So please contact Patricia, customer support at expansions.com, to be a part of that big event. And remember, our self-healing group webinars are ongoing. We have another session beginning this coming Wednesday, so if you want to join, we have a great group that's based on my Decoding Your Life book. And if you don't have the Decoding Your Life book, you want to add this to your library, because this contains very foundational life principles, universal law that you need to function on a daily basis. So, self-healing group webinars beginning this Wednesday. And then, of course, my free group blog fast. Now, it's been very interesting because people are learning about mind over matter and how mind sets the energy and your body follows. So those have been very fascinating. Be sure you join in. And of course, this month we are talking about spiritual connections. We are talking about energy, and we are talking about money. So a very, very good blog, and we have great participants. And finally, I want to remind you of our newest book, Healing Archetypes and Symbols. It comes with a lot of color pictures in here. And so it's a really beautiful, beautiful book. I'm really happy about it. People are asking me, when's it going to be on Amazon.com. Usually takes around 30 to 60 days by the time that we get a book here, and then we get it uploaded. And it's being worked on to go into Kindle. We also have our Hyperspace Plus. So these are our two newest books. If you don't have those yet, you want to add those to your library, because each book is full of things that Stewart and I personally use. And again, I wanted to do this last week. This is the envelope that I send in. So we can usually get about 3 books in here. To go overseas, it costs, believe it or not, about $35 to get 1 book to you. That's the post office charge, not what we charge. We don't charge anything for putting it in the envelope. We don't charge anything for taking it to the post office, but $35 to get it to you. So if you order 1 or 2 more books, and you put that in your envelope, it's still, I think, maybe around $53, which I think is ridiculous. We used to be able to send flat rate, but like I said, they're raising it, the prices, which I think is to stop us from disseminating information. If you have your Kindle, that's a way to do it, but with a push of the button, that information is gone. So I really advocate building your personal libraries as you can, and the cost per book goes down. Or if you have a friend and you guys can order some things together, that does help lower the cost per unit. So anyway, I want to thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you somewhere in the world. Thank you very much for liking our Facebook pages. Thank you for joining our site. We have fabulous, fabulous members and a lot of very interesting discussions on our blogs. So I look forward to seeing you in January. We have people signing up already from all over the world. And that is always an amazing class. I think this will be about our 7th year doing this January class, and it is our most intense. So, and June 2017, I am taking another Clear Health and Healing tour back to the northern parts of Italy. So you can check the website out for that. I think we're getting that posted. Lots of activities going on in 2017. We will be somewhere in the world where you can see us, and please come here, St. Joseph, Michigan. It is a fabulous step-up transformer area. There is no place like it anywhere else in the world. I will see you very soon. Thank you again. Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow, expansions.com.